Thank you. For those of you who don't know me, Annina Hogan. I'm just going to kind of give you a summary as to what we have found to date and kind of where we're going to go point forward. And Mike's going to talk a little bit about some action limits when it comes to indoor quality standards. So the school district reached out to me as the district's engineer and architect to manage kind of an investigation associated with the rubberized floors here in the school district. So first step on that was to pull a team together. So in that team is myself and individuals from our office, including environmental scientists, Mike Menz, who's a certified industrial hygienist, Jim Eberts with Epic Environmental, who's been helping us get in a lot of the testing, which is physically completed in the field, and Tom Pruno from environmental design, another environmental scientist. So we've been kind of working as a team to collaborate and pull together a protocol and plan of attack. So when I came to the board meeting last month, it was very early stages. It was really, the testing had not been done other than some preliminary tests from before. So the first thing that we had recommended to the school district was, although 3 of the rubberized floors in the school district were installed in the 2005-2006 timeframe, and were supposed to be after the mercury rate was no longer in use, we recommended just doing bulk sampling of all those floors just to be 100% sure we found it. The bottom line is we received total mercury results. We received also what you call, we'll call it abbreviated as a T-clip result that tells you if the mercury has to be treated as hazardous waste. And the findings is that with regard to these floors is that all of the rubberized floors, including those 3 that were installed in 2005-2006 timeframe, the others were installed in 1997, all of them were found to have mercury in excess of 0.2 parts per million. So it would need to be disposed of as hazardous waste, and all of them fall into the realm where we would trigger it into air sampling protocol. So that being said, what I would like to do before I go over the details of the air sampling that's been completed to date and the findings, I'd like Mike to come up and provide a little bit of background on different guidelines that are out there. I'll come back.
Okay, good evening. As Annina mentioned, there are numerous guidelines or thresholds out there for air sampling, and mercury vapor we're worried about inhalation. We're not worried about contact or ingestion. The initial exposure limits would be more occupational, which the modeling is based on 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year for working lifetime. And they're up into anywhere from 25 to 100 micrograms per cubic meter. But we really don't want to use those occupational exposures because it's based on a working lifetime with limited exposure. We really want to kind of focus on children and a lifetime of exposure. So it is kind of new territory. The EPA does have thresholds, and there are so far 4 or 5 states that have been looking into this issue, and there's not a consensus standard at this point universally, but Minnesota has some guidance of 1.8 micrograms per cubic meter based on duration of exposure and age, if it's the teacher or the student. California has some reference exposure levels, but I'd like to focus on the EPA has a reference concentration of 0.3 micrograms per meter cubed. And in that concentration, their mathematical modeling is based on continuous exposure 24 hours a day for a lifetime. And after 70 years, having no adverse effect. So taking that into account that it is continuous exposure for a lifetime, obviously the students and the teachers and the parents aren't in these functional spaces every minute of every day for 70 years. So there's already a safety factor built into that number. A couple of years ago, there were some issues in a Burlington school, and a PhD toxicologist from Rutgers wrote a letter supporting that reference value of 0.3, figuring it is a safe value. New Jersey Department of Health, after the Kinder College incident, they promulgated a guidance level of 0.8 micrograms per cubic meter. So that's obviously a little bit above. And then the Agency for Toxic Substances Disease Registry, they have a range that goes up to 3.0 micrograms. So falling in line with the Arizona models and guidelines, Arizona basically said if you're 1.0 or less, which is kind of in line with the New Jersey DOH, it's no further action is really necessary. If you're between the 1 and 3 micrograms per cubic meter, you can still use that functional space, but make some adjustments, do some continuous modeling, maybe increase the ventilation and do further actions. Their recommendation, which is in line with the Agency for Toxic Substances Disease Registry, is if you exceed 3.0, you should vacate the space. So far, none of the air sampling results that have come in are close to that yet, but they are what I'd say the most applicable standards, not getting into the occupational, US OSHA and New Jersey POSHA has an occupational exposure of up to 100. So we are in 1 or 2 orders of magnitude to the EPA and the DOH numbers, which again, I personally think as, an exposure control, that's really where we want to be. And there's still studies going on. So I would recommend using the Arizona approach. New Jersey does not have that yet, but I think they are realistic, conservative values to protect the occupants and the public, and to help prioritize remediation and response actions in interim controls.
So with that being said, I want to go through just a preliminary summary of what's been done to date, air sampling, and the results we have found to date, and kind of where we're going from here. So just as a kind of quick reminder from what Mike had said, everything I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to be using micrograms per meter cubed. So again, if we're in excess of 3 micrograms per meter cubed, we're looking to vacate that space. If we're between that 1 and 3, we're looking to take some further action. And in an ideal scenario, we'd be below 0.3. That being said, so let's just talk about the air sampling that's been completed. So Bells and Bunker Hill schools had air sampling completed on February 13th. When these were completed, the schools were in standard occupied conditions. Bells School, the air sampling, all but one came back as non-detect. The one that came back with the detectable was 0.16, so it puts us even below that 0.3. That being said, although that's in the no further action, we did actually make a request to the school district facilities to increase the outdoor air, increase the ventilation of space, just to see if we can make it even better. With regard to Bunker Hill, the average readings came in at 0.59 micrograms per meter cubed. Again, below the 1, but in excess of the 0.3. What we have done at Bunker Hill is executed an increase in the ventilation rates in the gym, as well as, sorry about that, as well as reduce the temperature in the space. At the time in which that sample was taken, the temperature in there was in the 70, 71 degree range. It's recommended to drop it down to about 68. So a combination of the increased ventilation and a drop in temperature. We have also, the gym is on a 24/7 ventilation, so it's not just doing it during occupied hours to improve the ventilation. We have rescheduled for today, air sampling with the improved ventilation rates to see what success we've had on even dropping the number. Birches and Whitman schools were completed on February 19th. Again, with standard outdoor air conditions, just about 20% outside air. We just got, I apologize, this is not in the report that I issued to you yesterday because I just got these results today, but I wanted to be as open as I could with everyone. Birches School averaged 0.6 micrograms per meter cubed. So we have confirmed today with facilities that they have increased the outside air to 50%. The temperature set points are appropriate and put it on 24/7 ventilation. Birches School is scheduled for retesting tomorrow based on the improved ventilation rates. See if we have an improvement to that number as well. Whitman School averaged 0.86 micrograms per meter cubed. Similarly to Birch's, we've done the same confirmation with the facilities of the amount of outdoor air, temperature appropriateness, and 24/7 operation. That again will be tested tomorrow. And so we'll see what the change in the ventilation has done as an improvement mechanism to see what we can do about making those even better. Wedgwood and Herfield schools, the air testing was completed on September 21st. We are still awaiting the results. The high school and Thomas Jefferson schools, the air testing was completed on Monday the 25th, and again, we're still awaiting those results. Once we, obviously with each one of the results, if we see if there's something we can do to improve ventilation, adjust temperatures, if we can do to make it better, we're going to execute that. Once we're completed all the occupied space air sampling, what we're going to do is we're going to complete what we call worst case scenario air sampling. And what that does is it will tell us how high the rates might get if we don't have the ability to cool. But all of these gyms do have cooling, just so you know. If for some reason cooling was to go down during a summer day, or say you were to lose ventilation on them, we want to know what those worst case scenarios are. The reason for that is if you do have a failure in the HVAC system or during the summertime, to decide whether or not you want to continue to use the space. So for right now, that's not our current present usage, but we want to have that data so we can make some decisions. So that would be something that we do over a weekend. Probably going to start sometime in March, and we'll start that over the weekend. We're going to get 2 schools done a weekend so we can see that through. Above and beyond that, obviously anything we can do as far as we'll see how the results come in, see what we can do to improve. Like Mike said, if something comes in the 3 range or higher, we're going to make a recommendation to cease occupancy of those gyms. As of right now, nothing is coming even close to that number. Besides that, we're going to do the best we can to mitigate and reduce. As soon as we have all the finalized air sampling data together, at that stage, what we'll be doing is putting together a recommendation to the school board, to the superintendent and the business office with regard to prioritization for removal of these floors. It is my recommendation, and I believe it is the anticipation of the administration to recommend to the board that regardless of the air sampling results, if they come back acceptable in the occupied mode, that it will be our long-term plan to want to get rid of these floors and not have to worry about this continuous monitoring. So what we're trying to do is make sure, based on the results of the air sampling, the age of the children in the spaces and the use of the spaces, to give you a prioritization, a recommendation of which ones to come first. So that's kind of the gist in a nutshell. As soon as we receive back all of the air sampling, we'll provide you a complete report that gives you a little bit more documentation on that front. That's Rana.